السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما وعملا يا رب العالمين. أما بعد. Good evening and welcome back. If it's your first time joining us, welcome. Hopefully, inshallah, you'll continue to join us here on Monday nights. The series that we just started last week is called Fruits of Faith. And last week we spoke about fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And of course, that was, I think, initially a little interesting to think about fear of Allah as a fruit of faith. Because maybe for some of us, the idea that we fear Allah, that wasn't seen in any positive light. So this series is really about trying to highlight the fruits that one can enjoy as they traverse the spiritual path, as they attempt to draw closer to Allah and improve their relationship with Him. There are obviously obstacles, and we spoke about that in our last series. In this series, the goal is to talk about the different benefits, fruits, beautiful states of heart that we might reach as we continue trying to draw nearer and nearer to Allah. So last week we spoke about the fear of Allah, and we gave an analogy of a bird. We talked about how fear is balanced out by hope. It's meant to be balanced out by hope. Al-Iman bayn al-khawf wal-raja. True faith in God lies between hope in God's mercy, but also a reverential fear, a fear rooted in a deep respect for God. It lies in between. That's a healthy balance. And so this week and next week as well, I want to spend some time talking about hope, ar-raja in Arabic, hope. And when we speak about hope, we mean hope of Allah's mercy, hope of His forgiveness, hope of reward from Him, hope that He is pleased with us when we stand before Him. And hope and fear, they're not contradictions. This is important. They're not contradictions. They may be opposites to some degree, as in, we wouldn't typically associate someone who's fearful with someone who has hope. But in our case, they do simultaneously exist. And what would we call the opposite of fear? The actual, real opposite of fear would be what? Anyone? Can't hear you. Confidence. Okay. I think it would manifest as confidence to some degree, but what's bravery? You'd show bravery in the face of fear, yeah? Courage, also in the face of fear. The opposite would be, I think, something like security and safety. Living in fear versus living in safety. What's the opposite of hope? Despair. Beautiful. Despair. And that's actually kind of what I want to reflect on for a moment today. See, healthy hope in Allah, in His reward, in His mercy, it should not diminish due to disobedience. And healthy fear should not diminish when you are obedient to Allah. When you do something good, your fear should not diminish. There should still be a deep respect, a deep, reverence for God. When we disobey, our hope in God's mercy should also not diminish. But the reality, how many of you would say that it is the case, though, that very often when we disobey Allah, our hope in His mercy and stuff goes down? How many of you would say that's the case? Yeah? You can answer, guys. You can. No? You don't agree? I want any feedback, inshallah. All right, guys? How many of you would say that when we do obey Allah, that sometimes our fear of Allah also diminishes a little bit? We don't feel as fearful. Anybody would say? You feel like you're good because you've done something good. This happens sometimes, that people will do something good, they'll feel at peace, they won't have that same state of fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then sometimes they slip into mistakes and commit sins. Because they're feeling what? Complacent. I'm good. I just did so much good. The whole Ramadan passes, and then after Ramadan, we're like, man, that was a good month. We really worked hard, and we might party too hard. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, it happens. So, a healthy hope does not diminish despite disobedience. And a healthy fear does not diminish despite obedience to Allah. That's what it's meant to be. When you do good, you still live between hope and fear. What? When you do good, the hope is that Allah will accept it, and the fear is that it will be rejected. You still live with that, right in the middle. When you disobey, you hope that you will be forgiven, but you fear that you might be punished for it. You still live in the middle. That's what it's meant to be. Okay, there is a difference here, and it's really important to highlight this point. When we speak about hope, we're talking about genuine hope. The hope that is praised, that we're meant to aspire to, is different than what are called vain hopes. In Arabic, the word is raja. We're meant to hold true, sincere hope in Allah. But we're not meant to be people of tamanni. Tamanni is vain hopes. What separates the two? The main difference between the two is, for someone who's sincerely hopeful, it's coupled with action. I hope Allah will forgive me. If I truly and sincerely hope that, I'll ask for forgiveness. I'll attempt to change my ways. I'll attempt to really rectify the way that I behave in my relationship with Allah. If I'm insincere, I will say, I hope Allah will forgive me. I don't change anything. I don't do anything differently. It's an insincere, vain hope. And sometimes we do that. We don't change anything of our behavior, but we say, no, but perhaps Allah will forgive. No, He might forgive. But it's a little bit disrespectful to make no effort to attain that forgiveness and just to hold almost this type of expectation that He will forgive. And that's not what we're talking about here tonight. We're talking about that healthy and real, sincere hope that we hold, which is coupled with effort and action to attain Allah's mercy and His forgiveness and His reward. Okay, now I was thinking about hope. And I was trying to make sense of how do I want to approach this topic. One way to think about it is this, that when we speak about hope, there's going to be three main components. There's going to be the person who's hoping. There's the thing that you're hoping for. And there's going to be the being or someone from whom you are hoping for that reward or whatever that thing is. You see the three components, the main three components there? It's me who's hoping for something. That something is what I'm hoping for. That's the second component. And the person I'm hoping for it from, that's the third component. And I want to analyze the various components. Today, I suspect we will only get through the first, which is us as beings who hope. But sometimes we don't hope. And I think that's really important to address. We probably will spend a lot of time today addressing this. One common struggle we have. Well, actually, let me ask you guys first. And I'll ask you guys to turn to your partners, inshallah, people beside you. Look for someone and discuss this. Why might a believer not be hopeful of Allah's mercy, His forgiveness, reward? Why not? What are some reasons? Bismillah, go for it. And if you didn't come for this, you're like, Shaykh, we didn't come for this. We just came to listen. I'm not trying to talk to nobody. I get you. But I'm sorry, I have to make you uncomfortable. Bismillah, go for it. All right, let's bring it in, guys. What did you guys come up with? What are some reasons that a believer might not be hopeful of Allah's mercy, His reward, His forgiveness? Yeah. Okay. So the idea is that I'm sinning repeatedly, and as a result, a human wouldn't forgive me if I repeatedly wrong them. But in the case of Allah, sometimes we mistakenly apply this human attribute to Him and feel that He also might not forgive me. Okay, yeah, that's one. Any others? Yeah. Lack of knowledge of who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. Beautiful. Ibn al-Qayyim, he says exactly that. Yes. Mental illness. Yes. Any other reasons? Yeah. Childhood trauma. Right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Back to the way we understand, we think about who Allah is, the concept of who Allah is, right? Sometimes we have this idea. Um, we think only like a kind of person deserves to be hopeful of Allah, right? Like the pious people can really be hopeful of Allah's mercy. Like they've kind of earned it. They've put in all the work. They've built that relationship with Allah, so they can hope for it from Him. But that's not really how it works. That's like thinking only healthy people can go to the gym. That's like thinking only knowledgeable people can go learn. The pious would say, "Siru ilallahi urujan wa makasir." Go towards Allah in the state of, like, even if you have to limp or you're in a state of brokenness, but go to Allah. What we're taught is we don't go to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala despite our flaws and shortcomings. We go to Him because of them. This is important. We don't go to Allah despite our flaws and our shortcomings. We go to Him because we have flaws and shortcomings. Because who else would you go to? فَلَئِن طُرِدْتُ فَأَيَّ بَابٍ أَقْرَعُ. Oh Allah, if you shut the door on me, which door do I go to? Who else can forgive you? Who else can save me and you from the fire? It is one Allah. And so, one of the greatest obstacles we face in our relationship with Allah and in being hopeful is seeing ourselves as unworthy. Think about someone who applies for a job. Or rather, they choose not to because they think, what? I'm not worthy. They're not going to hire me anyways. Oh, yeah, they hire people, sure, but me? No, they won't hire me. So I won't even apply. Maybe, is it possible, just from a rational perspective, isn't it possible that if they apply, they could be hired? It's possible. But when the individual chooses not to apply, then it's not possible, really, unless the recruiter reaches out or something. But it's not really possible. And the question then becomes, why might someone not apply? Because they don't see themselves as worthy. I don't meet the qualifications. Or, I see how many applicants there are. There's no point me applying as well. And when we deem ourselves unworthy, we lose hope. That's really important here. Why might we not be hopeful of Allah, of His mercy? Because we don't see ourselves as worthy. Why would I deserve it? And I'm going to come to this at the very end, but we just don't see how it's possible. Me, you know that word, someone like me could be forgiven. Allah could bring me close to Him. Why would He want me close to Him? There's a hadith or a saying from Al-Bara ibn Azib. A man came to him and said that there's a verse in the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, وَلَا تُلْقُوا بِأَيْدِيكُمْ إِلَى التَّهْلُكَ. Don't throw yourself into destruction with your own hands. So he asked Al-Bara, he said, is this talking about people who, go out in a battle and they kill someone or they're killed? Basically, is this verse referring to the idea of like, don't go and fight lest you be killed because then you cause yourself to get killed? Is that what it's talking about? He said, no. Don't throw yourself into destruction with your own hands means what? It means it's talking about a person who commits a sin and then says, Allah will not forgive me. Allah will not forgive me. This person, by despairing in Allah's mercy, by not seeing how it's possible that Allah could forgive them, has actually ruled upon themselves that they shall not be forgiven. So this is a serious matter. The idea that you or I, for us to think that Allah will not forgive me and I'm not worthy of His mercy or forgiveness or having a relationship with Him, that's a serious matter. It's not just something that we lose out on. It's detrimental to our spiritual progress and growth. And so we have to overcome this hopelessness. The believer cannot be hopeless. Because if you're hopeless, then there's no point in trying. And if there's no point in trying, you're not going to do anything. Why don't I pray? I don't pray because I don't think it's beneficial. I don't think someone like me would benefit from prayer. So I want to explore this now because I've been thinking about this. How could they, with Allah being so merciful and so forgiving, how could an individual truly believe that, no, there's no hope? Have y'all ever talked to someone who really just did not feel like they had a possibility of being in good standing with God? How many of y'all have spoken to someone like that? It's really challenging. Because you try to tell them, like, no, come back. Like, they're like, no, don't worry, you don't know me, man. You don't get me. Like, what I've done, what I've been through, like, someone like me, no. Like, you, mashallah, you come from a good family or whatever. You do this or you've done this. Me? No. And they won't even try. They don't think it's worth it. So how could you ever succeed potentially? How could you ever potentially connect with God if you don't even take the first step? And Shaitan has mission accomplished. Mission accomplished for Shaitan there. Because that's it. He's made you despair. That's all he wants from us. Okay. So I want to explore this idea of human beings believing that they're worthless or really having low self-worth. Because if you have that, and this happens even like relatively speaking, where you might not think you're worthless, but you think I'm not at that level. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like, yeah, no, I know Allah will forgive me, but like for me to become pious, no, that's I can't get there. Someone like me won't get to that level. I was talking to somebody who's taking a class, or they were debating whether or not they should take a certain class. And their whole, the thrust of their argument to me was this. They're like, someone like me doesn't take this class. I was like, what does that even mean? Someone like you. What's the prototype that we're talking about here? They were like, no. Like, if you look at who I am and the kind of person I am, I'm not befitting this class. Like, it's not appropriate for someone like me to take it. They didn't think they were worthy. No, they prayed and they did all that stuff. But now you start to like higher up the level of perceived religiosity and they go, no, that's not for me. Oh yeah, the pious people do that stuff. Me? No, I don't do that. And it's not because they don't want to. They just genuinely don't think that someone like them should be taking that class. Sometimes we feel like that with our halaqas and stuff, right? Like Monday Night Thrive. Maybe some of us for the longest time didn't feel like we really belong here. No, this is for like good people. With the lifestyle I live, like no, I probably shouldn't be here. No, and I understand. I want to explore that now in more detail. So there's a term that researchers, Eugene Segan among them, this term they've come up with that they say is one of the most powerful reasons why we see ourselves to possess low self-worth. Either we're completely worthless or it's very low self-worth. And they call it the pathological critic. The pathological critic in our heads, in our minds. And this is very important. Every one of us has a voice in our head. Everybody does. But some people have a critic in their mind that's way stronger than other people's. And this critic prompts trains of thought. And when we entertain these trains of thought repeatedly, we reinforce these trains of thought. And as a result, we begin to believe certain things about ourselves. And so if the train of thought and if the critic is saying, you're just so stupid, you're just so stupid, the individual hears this enough times, says it enough times, they begin to believe it. And maybe in that case then, when someone is shown a certain class, maybe you should take this class, they say, I'm too stupid. Like, why would I take that class? Someone like me would not, I can't learn this. And it's rooted in a belief of unworthiness. Now the question becomes, how does that critic develop? Anyone? I think many of us will be aware of where the critic comes from. We're not talking about just an inner critic. We're talking about a pathological critic. And we're going to explore like what's so pathological about it. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So people who score high on neuroticism tend to be very sensitive to negative emotions. So they'll notice the negatives more than the positives in general. In general, they'll notice the negatives more than the positives. And so anything negative they do, that will count for so much more than any good they do. And have you ever seen children like that sometimes? Where you could praise them 10 times, but if you criticize them even once, it has more of an impact on the child than the 10 praises you gave them. And for other children, it's like a 1-to-1 ratio. Every one praise, one criticism, they're good.